Let's see. Welcome, welcome. How's everyone doing? Good? All right. That was a great gift by Brother Gary of the removal of my visitor card. I really appreciate that. That was a nice surprise because it really has felt like family. The more and more we've gathered together, the stories and relationships that we've shared, it's actually really beautiful. In it, a couple of you said this as I walked in today. Of this is a nice surprise, and I feel the same. The surprise of new friends and family, the surprise of continuing relationship, the surprise of our stories being connected, and that's sort of the theme of today that I had on my heart to share this morning. Is the idea that God surprises us. Sometimes we don't think that. Sometimes we're caught off guard by it, and sometimes surprises aren't always bringing the best things that the things that we want, the things that we hope for. Some of the surprises are tough, but God surprises us, and He does it over and over again. And He doesn't say it's going to be easy. He doesn't say everything's going to go smoothly, but in the surprise, we can learn a lot. And I want to share a little bit about surprises. So to start us out, let me ask this question. Who here loves surprises? You love being surprised. Anybody? All right. Who here doesn't love surprises? Yeah, that's called ruining surprises. You're those people, right? On my 30th birthday, my wife had a big surprise birthday party for me. She got 80 people, figured out a place we were going to meet, and she was going to have everyone there. She was going to walk me in, and I figured it out 3 days beforehand. Now, depending on how you see life, I want people to know I'm right. Anybody like that? You're like, I want to make sure that I wasn't caught off guard. So I told one friend, my friend John. It's like, John, I'm telling you something, but it's the rule. You can't tell anybody that I'm telling you this. I know the surprise is coming, but I'm not going to tell her. I'm going to let her have this moment, and we're just going to have a great time. So in that moment where, the surprise happens, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And it was bigger than I thought. I didn't know the details. I just knew it was happening. John comes over, and he's not a good friend anymore because he goes, did you tell her you knew? And I'm like, what are you doing right now? My wife's face went all sad. And it's like, I didn't. It was an awful ruining of the surprise. But there was this other surprise I was thinking about in my life that was actually a lot more meaningful for me. When I was 10 years old, my mom immigrated to the U.S. from Taiwan for college and then stayed, met my dad. And so my grandma would live with us when I was a kid, and she was the best cook, right? She had homemade everything. It was amazing. She could stir fry anything, and you would want to eat it, and you'd smell like the stir fry in the entire house. And my grandma, I call her Nai Nai, she passed away when I was 10 years old. And I got the surprise offer to go with my mom to go bury her in Taiwan. Nobody else in the family. And I got to fly with my mom to Taiwan, get to spend time with all my aunties and uncles and family there. And then my mom surprised me, and she left me there for the summer. She said, you're going to experience my childhood with my sister and their family, and they're going to take care of you. So I stayed that summer. I went to Chinese school. I went to church in Chinese. I went to every restaurant on the side of the road. I could get my hands on some food. There was this one wonton place that was amazing. I still remember as cars are flying by, it was the best meal I've ever had. It was on the side of the road, and I would go back in a heartbeat. And it was a great surprise. And in that summer, I got surprised with new connections, relationships, new vision of the world, new experiences. And then I got one of the greatest surprises of my life. I got on the plane, and now I look at my mom with judgment now, okay? Because I'm like, wait, you sent me to Taiwan, you left, and then I had to come home. So she had an auntie take me from Taiwan to Japan, right? And then when I got to Japan, I'm 10 years old. She's like, good luck. You have a ticket, figure it out. And so I walked up to the desk, and I remember this as like, can't even see over the desk. I say, hey, I'm here for my flight back to the U.S. And the ticket agent was like, oh, sweetie, we got you. We got you. And she goes, I'm going to give you something special. And she surprised a 10-year-old with business class. My feet couldn't even get past the edge of the chair, but I had a recliner chair, and I was treated to the highest of highs in that experience. I had real glass. I was like, this is amazing. It was back in the day where there was only one movie that you could watch, right, on a plane. And so, but in business class, I didn't know this, but they had a special spot where you could open up your own TV and you got to watch movies, whatever you wanted. I'm like, why did you give the 10-year-old this? I judge everybody who made this decision. But I think because I had that experience, I've only had terrible plane experiences since. I've been flight delayed, lost luggage. I got payback for that blessing in my life. Sometimes surprises are great, and then sometimes they're not. Maybe you've been surprised. You had a job opportunity, new job opportunity, and you thought it was going to be your answer to prayer. And then that boss wasn't quite who they presented themselves to be. Maybe you had a vision for your family, and it hasn't quite turned out the way you thought. Maybe you had a home that you thought was going to be yours, and you had saved up enough money, and then people just outbid you. And you're like, God, what's going on in these surprises? I know for our family, and we've had surprises of health diagnosis and situations that have disrupted family gatherings, that have disrupted years and caused sadness. See, surprises are really interesting. We often only think of surprises as good, but I think it's the not good surprises that actually catch us most off guard. They rock our worlds. They rock our faith. And I don't know if you had this thought, but if you think about it, maybe you had this theology or thinking that if I follow Jesus, I'll only get good surprises. And you've had to wrestle with God. I'm trying to do right by you. I'm trying to follow you. I'm trying to live into this, and yet my life isn't turning out the way I thought. Where are you? Anyone have that prayer? Anyone desperately say that? Say the question, why God? Why me? Why now? Why this? And so we're in the Christmas story, and I think sometimes we miss the great surprises in the way God stepped into the Christmas story. We can go with the highlights, the star, the baby, the manger. We kind of know the story, the shepherds and the wise men, and they're all pretty on TV, on the remakes of stories, and it looks all so magical. But it was a big surprise. And there are actually two different couples that had surprises happen in the Christmas story. There was Elizabeth and Zechariah, and then there was Mary and Joseph. And both of them were met with surprises. And God's answer was unexpected for both of them. And by the way, God didn't answer them both the same either. He actually shows up differently for both of them. And the unexpected arrival of Jesus in the Christmas story caused massive disruption in people's lives. And it wasn't easy. And it didn't promise easy. But there's something more powerful that we can learn in it. So we're going to be in the book of Luke primarily. We're going to look at Luke chapter 1 and chapter 2. I'm going to kind of tell part of the story and give you some summary and point out a few things in the scriptures. But I want to kind of break down these two families and their experiences. I'm going to start with Elizabeth and Zechariah. So let me describe their kind of situation, give you the theme of what's going on. Elizabeth and Zechariah are desperate for a baby. They've longed for a baby, but it has not happened, right? And this idea, especially in Middle Eastern culture, the idea of being barren and not having a baby actually brings disgrace on you. There's so much value in the child. That's why I felt the honor of my mom asking me to go with her, not my two sisters, to go with her to bury her mother. It was a place of honor in Eastern culture. And it's the same thing. Having a baby was kind of like the purpose in that culture. So that was their hope. Luke chapter 1, verse 7 says this. They were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. So here's the reality. They've kind of probably stopped praying for that surprise. Kind of given up on that dream. I'm sure all of us have moments where we've given up on a dream because God didn't answer the way we wanted, in the timing we wanted. And so Elizabeth is barren, known to be barren. And there's shame on her and disappointment and fear. You can feel that from the outside community would be palpable, the shame that she walked around with, almost head down as she walked through life because things didn't go the way it was supposed to. And sometimes that view is our culture's idea of what's supposed to be the way. And then internally, can you imagine her sadness, her disbelief, her hurt, her burden? It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. We've navigated similar situations in our family, and it's heartbreaking as you sit with people who have a longing that have not yet been realized. Grief, pain, struggle. So what happens is God does something unexpected. God meets Elizabeth in an unexpected way at an unexpected time with an unexpected answer. Here's what it says in verse 25 of Luke chapter 1. Elizabeth, when she finds out she's pregnant, this is her response. The Lord has done this for me. For me. The Lord is for me, she says. In these days, he has shown his favor. And notice what it says next. And taken away my disgrace among the people. God's answer, God's provision in the way that he answered this prayer, even though it was at a very unexpected time, in an unexpected way, in an unexpected answer, it did something so powerful for Elizabeth and Zechariah. It took away the shame and disgrace that she carried with her. I think this is the prayer of most of us. We hope God surprises us by taking away the disgrace, the shame, and the fear that we hold in. The things that we feel, the things that we only talk about with a few select people. And then we do something that I think is very dangerous in theology. It's called, instead of this describing God's act for one particular person in one particular moment, in one particular way, we prescribe this to people. That this is how God's going to answer all of us. That Elizabeth's unexpected answer is going to be all of our unexpected answers. And what I've realized is when I believe that theology, I have been met with more pain because I've placed an idea on God that isn't God. A description of one is not a prescription for everyone. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And, I was just at a friend's funeral yesterday. I had 2 funerals yesterday and different reasons. One who was older, lived a great life and had a brief kind of ending to his life, and one who is much younger. And those are 2 very different situations. And the stories that were told at those funerals were very different because God didn't answer the same way for both. So what do we do with that? That's unexpected. That's surprising. I think that's why the power of Mary and Joseph's story gives us a vision of something different. So I want to compare the story of Elizabeth and Zechariah and the story of Mary and Joseph. Here's where Mary and Joseph had, right? They had this simple hope. Remember, they were about to be married. So you remember that moment, if you had the opportunity to be engaged, you're about to be married. If you just forget about the wedding day and all the decisions, it's a lot of fun, okay? You're like, there's going to be this new thing that happens. We have new dreams and new opportunities, and this is the hope. So Joseph and Mary have this probably simple expectation. We're going to be around family, and we're going to get married, and we're going to start our next phase of our life. Notice what happens in Luke chapter 1, verse 28. The angel went to Mary and said, "Greetings, you who are," notice this, "highly favored." See that it's in both of their stories. They're both highly favored. "The Lord is with you." Notice Mary's response. She was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. It's interesting, when we read these stories, like, oh, it would be amazing for an angel to show up and tell me everything, except if it actually happened, you'd freak out a little bit. And that's what's happening for Mary. She's like, I don't know what it means to be highly favored. I don't know if I want that. Because something here means it feels like something is coming. But the angel said to her, as he often says to all of us, when God meets us with a surprise, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus." So think about this. Elizabeth's prayer was to be a mother and have a baby. That's not Mary's prayer right now. Her prayer is to get married. And now she's being told she's pregnant before she's married. And in the culture, can you imagine the shame and disgrace in this moment that's coming in? What God's answer in this moment is not to a prayer that Mary has been asking for. God provides a surprising answer to something she is not desiring, an unexpected surprise. And actually, this surprise adds more complexity to Mary's life than anything she could imagine. Now her future husband's questioning, Do I just divorce her and go away quietly? That's what Joseph was like. To honor her the best he could, he was like, I'll step away from you quietly so that I won't make it a big deal, but I'm not going to be with you. You see, this moment is almost where one disgrace is removed. For Mary and Joseph, disgrace is added, complexity is added, difficulty is added, and it's not just about a moment. So Joseph's now wrestling, and Mary, as a young girl, is wrestling. How will she raise this child without a husband? In a culture that is everything. You can feel the external shame that this surprise gives, a different vision for their lives, a different vision than they expected or hoped for or prayed for. And then imagine just internally what that would do. The questioning, the fear, the anxiety, the worry, the unknown that this surprise would bring in. So this is why it's so important that we understand what happens for one does not happen for everyone. God may meet us differently based on his vision and his dreams for our lives. And the question is are we ready to receive that? Are we ready to allow God to surprise us, even if it's not the surprise we've been asking for? So here's what happens that we learn, that we could see the description of God's character. And I think this is more important than his answers, because the way he answered these prayers pales in comparison to the promise he makes with his actions. God does two things as he increases the complexity in their lives. He didn't promise the easy road. He didn't promise the simple road. When we start believing that, we'll step away from God because we have a poor theology of who God is. Not because God has changed his character or his faithfulness. But that's the most important thing that we learn. At the same time, here's what's most important that God does in the middle of the complexity. He invites both couples to draw closer, to not be afraid, to not increase their distance. Because in closeness to God, God can provide what we need. Our tendency is different than Mary's. When God meets Mary with an unexpected answer at an unexpected time in an unexpected way, he surprises her by reminding her that she has found favor, to not be afraid, and that God would be with her. So God surprises Mary with his presence and his provision. His presence and his provision. His way, not our way. And one of those ways, he actually uses Elizabeth to remind Mary of his presence. Here's what it says in Luke chapter 1, verse 42. When Mary goes to visit Elizabeth. And think about this moment. Like, I think one of the things that happens with us with the Bible is we imagine it in today's world. I could imagine Mary going to visit Elizabeth's family at a distance and not knowing what's going to happen. We're just thinking they're going to send a text, hey, I'm on my way. Oh, by the way, I got a miracle baby. Me too, right? Like that's how we kind of view the scriptures. But no, Mary went on this trek, and what happens is an unexpected answer. It says this is Elizabeth. In a loud voice, she exclaimed, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the child you will bear." It says the baby leapt inside of her womb at the presence of Jesus in Mary's body. What God does is he surprises Mary with just what she needs. The affirmation of community. The affirmation of God's favor being on her. And it wasn't the only surprise. Now let's go back through the highlights of the Christmas story. Joseph has an angel show up to him and give him truth so that he commits to Mary. There's an inn that is provided for. There are shepherds who come from far distance, wise men. Every one of these were affirmations of God's provision. Not the way Mary expected, not the way Mary planned it, but it was the way Mary needed it as she continued this complex journey of following Jesus. In Luke 2, 17 through 18, there's this unique part where we notice the effect of God's surprises and answers through people. It says this, when they had seen him, they spread the word among what was told to them about this child. These are the shepherds. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But notice what happened for Mary. Remember, She's been placed in complex disgrace, a difficult burden. And by the way, because we know the rest of the story, a burden that wouldn't go away. Do you think she was burdened carrying Jesus, raising him up and seeing him as he did his ministry and the way he was treated on the cross? It would be a burden all the way to the end. It was not a burden for a moment. It was a burden for the lifetime. And yet this is what Mary did. And I wonder if Mary goes back to this moment so much in her life as a reminder of God's provision in the unexpected moment. It says this, Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. What are these things? The way that God unexpectedly provides people, provision, and his presence in the journey ahead. Maybe not the answer she wanted, but it was the answers she needed. This is what happens as we notice the Christmas story and the way God moves. He meets us in unexpected moments, at unexpected times, in unexpected ways. And he surprises us. And I think the way he surprises us most that I've seen in my life is his presence in the process and people to journey with. Have you ever had a moment where you were uncertain about something and somebody gave you a word of encouragement that they were just like, hey, I was thinking about you today. Something in my heart I noticed, I thought about, and so I just reached out. Kind of one of my rules now in life is whenever somebody pops into my head that I haven't been thinking about for a while, but some point, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I thought about them. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on in their lives. I don't know their story. I just have this commitment with myself now that I'll text them immediately. In the next 10 seconds, I'm going to text them because I don't know what it is. But every time I've been faithful, the coincidences seem to keep happening. So it's like, you don't know what I was just stepping into. I was just going in for a job interview, or I was just wrestling with this situation, or I was just thinking about doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And right then, that text deterred me and was an unexpected text that I didn't know I needed. There's something that happens when God's presence and his people are the provision in our lives. And that is something that we can lean on and commit to. See, one of the things that I find for myself is when those unexpected moments happen, I kind of have two paths. I love going on walks. I have a group of friends that one of them moved out to Colorado, so I went out to go visit him, and he'd always like, let's go on a trail. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't have the gear. I'll follow your lead, right? He's like, it'll be great. You'll just be able to do it. So I'm like breathing heavily as I'm climbing up, like what I see is a mountain. He's like, this is like the pre-mountain, right? And I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm going lightheaded. I need to go home, right? So but what I have in these moments is either I'm going to trust him because he knows more than me. He knows the path of where to go. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know. I don't have the map. I don't have the trail. I haven't been here before. So I'm either going to trust my brother or I'm going to go my own. Now, what I know is he's climbed some of the biggest mountains in the world. He has the experience. He has the knowledge. He's done way more. So when he says this is a hill, it's because he's actually been on mountains. I haven't. I'm just on hills. But I have to make a decision. Same thing is true with God. Every time an unexpected surprise happens in our life, we have a choice to go, you have walked with people. You have led people. I can draw closer to your guidance in your ways, or I can try to do it on my own. Most of us, if we're honest, start going this way. Kind of go on our own. You're like, like in me, I'm like, I'm a little bit tired. I know I need a little rest. I just need 2 Netflix episodes instead of 3. That will make me feel better. Or especially at Christmas time, I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. Or this is so exhausting. I need another cookie. Right? So keep veering over here. I'm like, doesn't give me what I want, but it feels good. And how often do we do that? Think about with gossip. Same thing. I can honor a person, speak highly of them, elevate them, or I could just trash them because I get accepted among the friend group. I have 4 kids, and my oldest is a teenager now. I'm exhausted by the drama. I'm not joking. I have 3 girls, and then my boy, and so my youngest is my boy, the 3 girls, and they love to tell me that all 3 of them will be teenagers in my home at the same time, and I'm scared. But we have these moments. I was talking with one of my daughters on the way to school, and I was like, "Hey, I noticed the friend group because we're walking through some of her text messages. The friend group, I noticed somebody was trashing this other person, and I noticed there was an outside text without that person about that person. What's going on? Wow, And I watch her, and here's the easy part: as us as adults in the room, we still get caught in it. We may have perspective of what's going on, but man, we could get drawn in. And I watched that moment where she's watching, she doesn't know what to do because 2 friends are bashing her other friend. And she isn't bashing, but she's there. And then her other friend who's being bashed is like, are they talking bad about me? And my daughter does what I think most of us do. What? No, are they talking bad about you? I'm not talking bad about you. Right? She's avoiding the conflict. And we're talking about what does it mean to step into it? Now, that's the thing about God's presence. It's always available. He's always offering it to us, inviting us to come closer. And yet our natural tendency is to distance ourselves from him. There's this crazy stat. It's actually really disheartening to share, and it's specifically for men. But I think it's something that we all need to be aware of. There was this new study that came out just recently, and I keep talking about it because I don't know what to do with it yet fully. But in 1990, men, specifically in the U.S., 40% of men said they had 10 plus friends. 10 plus friends is a crew of friends to gather with in 1990. Think back, I go back to my childhood, us riding bikes up and down the neighborhood, it was so much fun. Us teeping that one, no, I'm just kidding. But in 2021, the stat was less than 15% of men have 10 friends that they can call on. 10 close friends. A lot of acquaintances, but 10 close friends. And that seems to be true. It's like all of a sudden technology, which gives us access to everything in the world, what has it done? Draw us closer or push us further away? Start pushing ourselves further away. Here's the stat, though, that really I'm mindful of. In 1990, 3% of American men said they had no friends. 3%. In 2021, over 15% of men say they have no friends to call on. In simple math, that's 500% increase. A 500% increase in us being isolated as a society. See, I think what happens now, imagine when the unexpected surprises happen. Who do you run to that'll point you back to Jesus? Who's the one that's going to call you out when you're drifting and distancing yourself from Jesus? Who's the one that's going to challenge you and say, hey, there is a better way over here? May not be the easiest, it may be more complex. You may have to sacrifice something, but it's better. It's more fulfilling. It's more hopeful. It's more freeing. See, I think sometimes we are tempted, especially when the unexpected burdens of life come at us. We are tempted to focus on the burden and try to wrestle with the burden rather than the baby who gives us hope. Jesus, who Mary carries through the unexpected burden of childbirth in that moment, the burden of people's expectations, the burden of being on the run. She had burdens to carry with her, but the burden paled in comparison to the promise of Jesus. It always does. And yet, when we carry the burden more than we carry the baby, when we focus on the burden more than we focus on the Messiah, we lose hope. We lose peace. We lose joy, and we find ourselves chasing it. And we're unsure of why it keeps fleeting. But here's the truth. That God is more concerned about meeting us with everlasting hope than temporary hope. He's more concerned with us finding his presence because he sacrificed himself not only for our past, not only for our present, but for our future, because he wants us, no matter how far we've run, no matter how many questions we have, no matter how much we've allowed the burdens to take hold, he wants us to experience joy again. I love the prayer of David in Psalm 51, verse 10. It says this, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Renew something in me. I've tasted it. I've seen it. I long for it. Renew that steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. It's that promise of God's presence. God wants that presence. And then this is the last line of it. It says, restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Which path? The salvation of Netflix, gossip, and trying to find our way, or the salvation of Jesus, who offers everlasting hope, who's a true anchor in turmoil and trial. It's so interesting, David's one line, and I want you to repeat this back with me. Restore the joy. Restore the joy. You know what's interesting about that word? It's a prayer. Life isn't going so well. I'm burdened, feeling the weight. You know what I pray? Restore the joy. And when I say restore the joy, it's this simple proclamation that restoring the joy isn't about a feeling, but it's about perspective. Who offers salvation? Am I clinging to things that offer salvation for my soul, or am I clinging to the author of salvation? What is the thing that gives me joy? What is most faithful? What is most sacrificial? What is most loving? What is most hopeful in my life? When I say restore the joy, I'm clinging to, in the middle of carrying a burden, that there is a declaration of hope. Restore the joy. When we say we restore the joy, we're not saying I have it all together and I can figure it out. I'm just clinging to the promise of God's presence in the chaos. I'm clinging like Mary does, that God's unexpected surprise, that God's going to be with her on that journey. He's going to direct her. He's going to comfort her. He's going to give her peace in the chaos. Romans 15:13 says this, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you do what? Trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope. Not have hope, not just have a glimmer of it, but overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Not by your power, not by your skills, but just by the person that offers the promise of his presence. Joy overflows. Joy overflows from the anchor of our hope. That's why the writer of Hebrews says this, we have this hope as an anchor for our soul. It's for our soul, that it would be firm and secure. Jesus is the anchor. Jesus is hope. Jesus is the one who can restore the joy. So when we feel like we're stuck in the middle of a decision of, are we going to share or hide who we are? Or are we going to share with our brothers and sisters about where we need support and community, and we need to be drawn back to the presence of God, that we're exhausted and we need hope? Who offers joy? Everlasting. Joy overflows from that which we place our identity and our hope. Restore the joy. It's a beautiful, beautiful prayer. It's a simple prayer. It's the prayer that Mary is praying as she sees her boy raised and goes to the cross. She knows that there is a joy that is set before her, a hope that is out of this world. It's the unexpected burden that she carried to the very end. But she carried it not because of the burden itself, because of who Jesus is. Jesus is the faithful anchor in the unexpected storms. You know, when we witness God's faithfulness, it increases our courage. And as I was thinking about just one moment in just very honest, personal side of my life, I remember a moment where I was wrestling with this kind of decision, right? Am I going to cling to Jesus as my anchor, or am I going to try to look good in front of my buddies, right? You know that feeling. You know that feeling of what are you going to say? What are you going to do? How are you going to show yourself? So when I made the decision to walk away from my job, I was in supply chain and engineering, and step into ministry. My wife and I, we took a 65% pay cut to do that. And we were living that dink life, that double income, no kids life. It's a good life. You can eat what you want. You can sleep when you want. You can go out when you want. You can stay in when you want. It was great. It was great. And then we decided to go into ministry, and we're like, we're doing this for Jesus. But you want to know what? It was hard. Not everything we did for Jesus felt good. And there was tiring moments. And I remember I was out with a group of my buddies, this group of friends, and we're all grabbing some food. And my wife and I, we were living on, again, when you cut 65%, you got to cut a lot. I cut everything but ramen noodles, right? We were living on ramen noodles and dollar pizzas. That's what we had. And we're living on gift cards. So my buddies, they go out to eat. They asked me to come along, and so I want to be there. And I was like, I'll take the side soup and the side salad. That's what I can afford today. And that will be my eat out budget for the month. Ever been there? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're like, this is my reality. Well, my buddies have been very successful. And so my one buddy, Dan's, ordered the steak, ordered a beverage, ordered another beverage, ordered an appetizer for everybody, right? And then he does the worst thing anyone can do at the end. The waitress comes out, and she goes, how do you want these checks? And before anyone else could say it, he goes, let's split it. We'll just split it 6 ways. Make it easy on you. What do? Do I speak up? I can't afford that. Right? Or do I just put it on credit and pay for it later so I don't look bad? You been there? You made a decision where you're wrestling with, I'll sacrifice and put this on me so that you can have 2 steaks because you're an ex-football player and you're living the good life, and I'll pay for it. And you want to know what all I could think about? All I could think about is that I'm going to look like I don't have my stuff together. My identity in that moment was anchored to how I look rather than what my call on my life is and who Jesus is in my life. I don't have to be in shame in front of friends saying this is who I am and this is my reality, but I can feel the tension. In unexpected moments, where's your anchor? Are you anchored to the person of Jesus who offers his presence and provision? Or are you anchoring yourself to the fleeting temporary moments? I remember in that moment, because I had one friend there that knew exactly what I was going through. And I leaned over to my buddy Adam. I was like, Adam, because I was so embarrassed. I can't afford this, man. I mean, I love following Jesus. I made this decision, but I can't afford to pay for Dan's food. I can't afford it. And he's a jerk for making me, right? I had all the other things I was feeling. I might have whispered that a little bit under my breath. And my buddy Adam goes, hey guys, no, you guys bought way more than Justin did. Don't put that on him. And he spoke up for me. Adam is anchored in his identity to Jesus. He had no problem speaking up for somebody. And I clung to that because I know that there are people in my life who remind me of who is faithful, who offers favor, and what our calling is. My calling in life is not to look good in front of people. My calling is to be faithful to the one who has been more faithful to me. That is where I'll place my anchor. So when the surprises come, the simple prayer is, Jesus, restore the joy. And that changes my perspective. My joy is not dependent if I can pay this meal for somebody. My joy is not dependent on if I look good. My joy is not dependent if all my circumstances are fine. My joy is dependent on the person of Jesus. And that is his promise, that he is for us and he'll be with us. And we don't have to be afraid because he sacrificed everything on our behalf for our past, our present, and our future. And nothing else in this world offers that. So why would we give it our anchor of hope? Jesus, we thank you that you invite us not to carry the burdens on our own, not to hold on with desperation and cling to what looks good or what feels good or what comforts us in this world, but that you are far greater than this world, that you are a far greater anchor of hope. You are a far greater anchor of vision, that your salvation is far more freeing and hopeful than anything else we can pour our lives into. And may we walk with courage into this next season as we see the baby born in a manger, who is the anchor of everlasting hope, and see how that baby sacrificed himself for us so that we could experience your hope, your grace, your truth, your love, and your presence. May we cling to your presence once again today. In Jesus' name, amen.